I'm back, bitch.
I'm back, bitches!
Hello. I am coming in today to update you all on the books I've been reading recently. My last couple of videos were talking about the books I was going to read in October and then the books I was going to read in November. The books for October were Victorian literature and Gothic literature, and then the ones I read in November were non-fiction. Because I'm rubbish with readathons, I ended up reading those over November through till Christmas, and now it's January, so I'm still reading some of the non-fiction now. So I think when I do readathons in the future, I'll limit myself to like 4 maximum so that I can go through 1 book a week, and also make sure that I'm not reading any other books, maybe. And then I'll be able to stay on schedule. But I mean, my channel is only a small channel, so I don't feel that much pressure, but it probably is quite annoying for people watching. So I'll see. I've not posted any vids in a while, and it's been quite nice living life, being busy. So I hope you've been busy as well. I did actually film a video talking about the Gothic and Victorian literature that I read, but I didn't find the time to edit it. So the earlier part of this video will be me back in time with a different haircut, talking about those books, and then this one will be me talking about mostly non-fiction. So yeah, this video is going to be me talking about the books I mentioned in my Victober and Gothtober TBR video and my non-fiction November TBR video.
Now, let us begin.
So the first one I read was Wuthering Heights, an old favourite. This was really good. Wow, really good. Is that the best I can do? Obviously, the story is meant to be quite sad, but this time when I read it, I actually found a bit of humour in it. You know, particularly the dialogue. It tends to be quite witty in parts, but witty in a kind of nasty way. So yeah, I love this even more this time round. Yeah, this book didn't take me long to reread. It was quite a quick read, actually. Yeah, this is a perfect novel. If you don't know anything about it, basically you follow the life story of Heathcliff. So you follow how he arrived in the town they live in the countryside, in the north of England. And then it follows him to his death. And throughout his life, you follow the different generations he comes into contact with. But the actual story is told by this, I guess, middle-class, upper-class guy called Lockwood, who comes to the Heights and ends up getting ill and staying there. And then the servant of the house, Nellie, ends up telling him the story about how Heathcliff got to be where he is. It's framed kind of a bit like Frankenstein, where you have these first-person narratives, and then it's kind of like the Russian dolls, where there's one inside the other. It's so interesting seeing how the generations act so differently. The first part is the most uproarious, and that's the most intense, famous part of it, really, where there's the whole Kathleen and Heathcliff and Linton and the whole kind of 3 love triangle drama. And then after that, you follow their offspring, and it's still dramatic, but less romantic, and it's hardier almost, I would say. I mean, really, it's a story all about dysfunctional relationships, which I love reading about. The first time I read Wuthering Heights, I was 16, I think, and we were on holiday in France in a caravan. And I remember that was partly when I was really getting into literary fiction, actually. So I read Pride and Prejudice, adored it, and then the next day I was reading Wuthering Heights. And I remember my mum, Pride and Prejudice is one of her favourite books as well. And I remember when I was reading Wuthering Heights, and she was like, I hate that book. It's just all about nasty people in a nasty family. And I actually love Wuthering Heights just as much as Pride and Prejudice. But yeah, I really wonder if you like Pride and Prejudice, if that means, because Pride and Prejudice ends so happily, whereas this book doesn't end really happily. Some parts of the ending are happy, but generally the ending is just as nihilistic as the rest of it. And it's kind of like death grants you peace. Whereas Pride and Prejudice isn't really like that. So I really wonder if, as a reader, if there's certain types of readers where you either love Pride and Prejudice and don't like Wuthering Heights, or if you love Wuthering Heights and don't like Pride and Prejudice, or whether you're like me, where you love both of them and can appreciate the differences. So yeah, let me know, which do you prefer, Pride and Prejudice or Wuthering Heights? I just find Nellie more interesting as a character this time. Like, really, this time I was like, okay, so there's a code you have to follow as a servant, isn't there, where you acquiesce to your masters, but at the same time, sometimes she acquiesces, and then other times she doesn't, depending on, I don't know, how she feels. Basically, if the story's going to get more dramatic, it's like she lets it play out, when really, if she did care about these people the way she makes out she does, she wouldn't do that. She would protect them more. So this time, Nellie is probably my favourite character because she just stirs the pot so much. Yeah, so good. Right, the next one I read was Shadow Dance by Angela Carter. This was her debut novel, and it was brilliant. A little bit overwritten, but it is Angela Carter, and she was only like 20 or something when she wrote it, so can forgive that. It follows a character called Honey Buzzard, not his real name, and then another character called Morris, and they own this dilapidated vintage shop in Bristol, so it felt very 60s Bristol. The way it captured Bristol was so good. It was just this like decaying city. I mean, now it's more gentrified, but back then I can imagine it was totally like that. So this book opens with a girl called Ghislaine, I think it's called. There's her name there. Ghislaine, not sure how you say her name, but you open with her and it just describes this massive scar she's got on her neck. The novel did have some interesting things to say about disfigurement, actually, because before she had the scar, she was this beautiful girl, and now she has the scar, basically everybody just shuns her. It's really sad to read about. She kind of just haunts the novel in the background, but the main character, I would say, is Morris. So Morris, even though he's married, he's sleeping with her, and then now she's got this gash on her neck. He's like, oh no, I wouldn't want to fuck her anymore.
You are disgusting. Disgusting!
The novel is a reckoning for him. It follows him going along and he's like, Honey Buzzard, did you do it? Because you kind of ruined her life. And then Honey Buzzard is just such an eccentric character. And I thought the doubling between them was done so well. Because it's 60s Bristol, there's just all these like ruined houses. They go to raid one of the houses to get stuff for their vintage shop. And there was a scene where they were just like drunkenly dancing in just this ruined old house, which I thought was really beautiful. So yeah, really, really good. Next one I read, Secret History by Donna Tartt. Very famous book. Follows classics students in a university in Vermont. I'm guessing it's set in the 90s, but not totally sure. And this was in first person. Generally, I liked this novel way more than I thought. I wasn't sure what to expect with this. I thought maybe I would need to know a bit more about the classics to understand it, but really you don't. You follow Richard, and he's from, I think his dad owns like a shop back home in California, and then he made the last minute decision once he got to Vermont to study classics. But it's not like studying classics in a normal university. So there's this like elite little squad of maybe like 4 or 5 other people who study classics. And to get onto the course, the professor has to be like, oh my gosh, yes, I like you, and you're cherry-picked. So Richard ends up getting cherry-picked, and all of a sudden he's like, oh my god, now I'm part of the in squad at the university, or the college, as they say in America. And then you follow the novel from there. And it was quite enjoyable because the other characters, they're kind of like mega privileged people. They all think they're incredibly smart. They all think they're incredibly rich. Some of them, they're from richer backgrounds, but now they're not as rich. Or some of them are really, really rich, and they just think they can do whatever they want. Because Richard is new to the group, he's an outsider, and then you follow him as he integrates himself into the group. I thought that was done really well, and I thought the writing was actually so gorgeous. The prose was so lush.
It was good, wasn't it? Let's face it.
You're beautiful.
I think I'll read My Little Friend next of hers, and then maybe The Goldfinch if I really like My Little Friend. Yeah, The Secret History I thought was good, and then it kind of just has these ridiculous elements to it. Like there's parts where it gets weird and into like dark academia, where the in-group in the little squad do some like ancient Greek ritual where they kill someone or something. So I thought that was just stupid and ridiculous. But I guess maybe she was trying to do commentary on things like initiation ceremonies, because that's a huge thing in American colleges, isn't it? Apparently, if you want to be part of a sorority or fraternity. I think in the 90s that was a huge thing, wasn't it? Where people would end up tied up in the woods because they were being initiated. So yeah, I thought the whole reenacting a Greek ritual was really ridiculous and cringe. And there are other cringy elements where after they kill this guy, they start speaking to each other in like ancient Greek. So the other gals at college and stuff don't understand what they're saying when actually they're discussing about how they murdered this person and how the hell they're going to get out of it. Basically, the novel was taking the piss out of these classic students who think they're so much better and intellectually superior than everyone else at the college. And the novel basically just runs rings around them and says, no, you aren't any better than anybody else.
No one likes a show off.
And that is the truth of the matter.
Is there anything I didn't like about it that much? They were meant to be 19, 20, 21, and they didn't read like 21-year-olds. They read like 35-year-olds, the way they talked. So I thought that wasn't particularly believable. What else? I thought Henry was really fair. Even though he's a terrible character, I thought Henry was so hot. My favourite part was when so because Richard isn't from the same privileged hedge fund families, he ends up having to spend the winter in Vermont in this like attic with a gaping ceiling over his head, and he nearly dies. So that part I thought was written so well. It was so emotional. So that was my favourite part. The part that actually had nothing to do with the classic stuff, funnily enough. Or dark academic stuff, actually. I thought the whole dark academia culture was pretty cringe. Every other page it described, oh my god, a forelock fell over the boy's head. But there were other parts I really liked. There was lots of like drug taking, bits of sex. What else was there? There was like a gay character in there. I thought he was quite fun to read about. There were twins. Yeah, as it gets on, there's more and more tea.
True tea. You are going to gag.
So yeah, read it. There's loads of different ways to enjoy this book. After that, I read Stardust by Neil Gaiman. Now, when I saw this cover, I thought it was going to be like kind of a kid's book. But actually, Charles Heathcote, in the comments section we were speaking, and he was saying that he sees this more as like a fairy tale. So, the same way fairy tales can be for kids and adults, this book can be for kids and adults. I did enjoy this for what it was. I mean, on the front cover, it says, the prose dances and dazzles. Don't agree with that. I thought the prose was clean. It was fine. But it wasn't anything special.
He's nice, but not so much amazing.
I want it. Sorry.
Yeah, it was cute from a fantasy point of view. My favourite parts were to do with the Witch Queen. So it keeps describing this just Witch Queen that's after the star that falls. Basically, in this book, it starts in the village of Wall. Every 7 years or something, this fairy market sets itself up for like one night on the other side of the wall, and then people can go and visit the stores and buy, a crystal flower and things like that. You follow the main character Dunstan, and his father impregnated this fairy person, so Dunstan is like half human, half fairy, so he can go in between the wall, and then this girl he falls in love with is like, oh my god, catch this fallen star and I'll marry you. So he goes on this trek to find the falling star. And that's how the Witch Queen comes, because the Witch Queen wants the star to keep herself young for her sisters. So it was quite fun. It was easy to read. Was it the best book ever? No.
Oh, no, honey, no.
Sorry, folks, but that's the truth.
But it was cute. I enjoyed the Witch Queen parts. And then I read Tales of Hoffman by E.T.A. Hoffman. So this was 3 stories. It was Crespel the Lawyer, The Sandman, and Adventures of a New Year's Night. This book is a lot of telling rather than showing, but I think if you can tell well, you can get away with it. And he definitely gets away with it. So yeah, Sandman, still one of my favourite short stories. And there's actually a character called Clara in The Sandman, which I forgot about. But Clara isn't the robot in that story. Clara she's the woman that the main character, Nathaniel, is in love with. Clara is this angelic girl that he's in love with. But I thought that was really interesting how Ishiguro borrowed that for his novel. And Adventures on a New Year's Night was actually so good. It was like a perfect Christmassy story as well. It was so cute. Well, not cute, but it had like cute Christmas elements to it. But really, this guy, he's obsessed with this girl called Julie, and he's like in love with her. And then he ends up speaking to this guy who sold his reflection in the mirror to this woman called Gilletta that he was in love with. So there's doubling going on with Julie and Gilletta and this stereotypical beautiful woman character. All the men in this are like really emotionally unstable. And one minute they'll be dancing, and then the next minute they're crying and going, oh my God, kill me. So yeah, full of histrionics and mood swings, but terribly good.
Time to move along.
Yeah, that was what I read for Gothtober and Victober. And then in November and December, I actually read another Victorian Gothic classic, which was Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. I love this cover as well, actually. You probably know the story of A Christmas Carol, but this was my first proper Dickens that I've read, and I actually really enjoyed it. It was only like 150 pages. It was very kind of creepy, but charming, verbose at times, but in general, it was good. So yeah, now I'm slightly less apprehensive about checking out his other books, because I do have Oliver Twist, The Old Curiosity Shop, David Copperfield, I think I might have that one. So if you've read any Dickens, what's a good Dickens to read after this one? Okay, so now I'm going to talk about the non-fiction I've read. What's the first one I want to talk about? I'll talk about The Painted Caravan first. As I mentioned in my TBR video, this is a rare book and it's out of print.
I win!
Yeah, this book is about like the history of the tarot cards, and a lot of it explains the tarot cards in detail, which I enjoyed because it's really, really difficult to find what the guy that wrote this, Basil Rakowski, it's really difficult to find what he said about it, and he's like an expert on this stuff. A lot of modern literature uses a lot of the symbolism from the tarot cards, so that is one reason why I wanted to read this. In general, love this, but the final part of it was like an example of a divination reading. It had this example at the end of it that was imagining you were a tarot reader and, two clients come in, and I found that tarot reading that it gave really basic and cringy. I think because it was an example, it was meant to be a really, really basic example that anybody could kind of scam anybody with. So I didn't like that, but the rest of it was gold. And I also loved the illustrations. Beautiful. Next, after that, I read My Story by Marilyn Monroe. This memoir was actually published like 10 years after she died or something, and she never actually sat down to write a memoir. This memoir was originally, she would go to like this guy's office and then she would just talk and he'd record her. So this book was based on the recording she left, but it wasn't ever finished. It's only like 170 pages, but there's loads of pictures in it. So I really, really enjoyed those. And I don't know that much about Marilyn Monroe, so hearing her in her own words was a treat. This detailed her traumatic, impoverished childhood, and it also had a lot of interesting things to say about the origins of her career and all the seedy men and the way they treat her. And there were some parts where she would just walk down the street, and this was before she was even famous, and men would just heckle her and say disgusting things to her, and she would never, ever, ever go with any of the men. That's what she claimed. But there was one bit where she kept talking about this Hollywood like producer that he took her under his wing, and she kept saying that he kept asking her to marry him, and that he was like a dear friend of hers. And she kept saying that she had never done anything with him, and I didn't really believe that. Like, I believed that she probably did sleep with him a couple of times, and that's how she got her big break. And I think other sources have said that she slept with him as well. But in this memoir, she made out that she never slept with him. But I was like, Marilyn, come on, spill the tea. I also wanted her to spill the tea on like the plastic surgery she'd had. Like, she had something done to her chin. Did she have stuff done to her nose as well? But she had plastic surgery, and in this, she makes out like she never did. She was just beautiful. I was like, Marilyn, come on.
I couldn't believe it. I really could not believe it.
The slightly annoying thing about this memoir is it wasn't ever finished. It felt kind of like just the beginning of it, really. It breaks off right at the height of her career when she just married her second husband, and she ends it being like, oh my god, he's the most wonderful husband, and in real life, he definitely wasn't. She doesn't mention any of this, but I think in real life, she was starting to really get hooked on drugs. So the memoir kind of ends in like a really cookie cutter lovely way, when really it was just when her life was really starting to plummet. 20th Century Fox would really screw their actresses over, so Marilyn Monroe was really starting to take some control back over that. So That was nice to see. What else? It was interesting because at the end of it, she's really starting to get into acting as an art form as well. So it was nice seeing her being honest about the blonde bombshell figure she was playing, and then how she was trying to take her job more seriously. So it was a pleasure seeing the more intellectual side of her come out. And now I can get on to reading Blonde by Joyce Carol Oates at some point. And now I do feel a bit more primed to read that. Oh my god, my flat is so cold, my nose is dripping. Okay, so the next book I read was A Critical Study of Sylvia Plath by Tim Kendall. So I have read parts of this book before. I read some of the essays when I chose to do Sylvia Plath for my long essay on my undergraduate uni course. So that was when? 2017? Yeah, long time ago. Rereading this and reading it thoroughly was a delight. And now I do feel prepped to start my Ariel series. So I'm going to go through all the poems in the Ariel collection, one by one, do a video on each one, like reading them, analysing them, talking about them, yada, yada, yada. So maybe I'll start that in February. So yeah, I did like this. My favourite essays were probably the ones on her bee poems, and it had a really interesting one on the landscapes in her poetry as well, because even before the Ariel collection, she did write a lot about landscapes, especially certain poems set in North Yorkshire. So it was really interesting seeing him analyse her landscapes, because that's quite overlooked in her poetry, I think. If you're a Plath fan, would definitely recommend this book. After that, I then read Pliny the Elder, A Natural History. This book, I thought it was like serious zoological, like scientific book, and it kind of is, but because at the time Pliny the Elder wasn't really an expert on this stuff, he just wrote about it. So it's more of like a pseudo-scientific zoological study. A lot of the things he says, he makes out like it's factual, but really it's not factual, because at the time they just didn't know the science behind everything. So a lot of what makes this book really interesting was the folklore of the time and all these myths around things that people didn't understand. So this book doesn't just have animals in it. It has minerals, it has herbs, it has magic, it has stuff about how they would mine things, how they would construct sewers and aqueducts and things. I've dog-eared loads of the pages because a lot of it was so interesting. Love this, but I did have to take it quite slowly. So yeah, that's the non-fiction stuff I read. And I'm still reading, I'm halfway through this Virginia Woolf biography by Hermione Lee. This is also another reason why it took me so long to upload this video.
I'm sorry, I'm so late.
Because ideally I wanted to finish this, but I've still not. When I read that James Joyce biography, that took me like 8 months to read. You know, I might as well sit down and film this now, because who knows how long this will take me to read. Once I have finished it, I'll talk about it more. It is very good, but I am taking it slowly because I do like to lap up all the details.
I'm a slow reader, but I wallow in it all.
Okay, so yeah, those are all my recent reads that I want to talk about. I've been reading poetry stuff as well, and have I read a couple of other books? Yeah, but I don't really want to talk about those. They weren't good enough, probably. At the moment, I am rereading Normal People by Sally Rooney, actually. Yeah, I've read all of Sally Rooney's currently published novels, so I wanted to reread Normal People because I did go in pretty hard on it in that earlier video. And after reading the other ones, because this is the one I read first of hers, and now I'm familiar with her style, and I already know the story and the characters, I did feel like reading this again because I did actually enjoy reading about Connell and Marianne's relationship, and I like the writing style best in this. I feel like she's at her best when she's writing in third person. So far I am 100 pages in, started reading this morning, and I am actually enjoying this. But I still stand by everything I said in my earlier video. But yeah, I am enjoying this more the second time round. My next videos in the works are my best and worst reads of 2021. What else have I got? New releases for this year, 2022, coming up. When I do a video on that, stay tuned for those. And I'm now off to cook some chili for my dinner. And I am going to, what else? Make a Nigella chocolate pudding. All right. Bye.
Goodbye.
Yes. Adios, mon chéri.